Relax.
Have you put the booster seat there as a joke? You thought I was winding you up. There's some milk.
No, that's a wind up.
No, I put it there because of the framing.
Right. Why not?
Just the booster seat is funny.
It's not a booster seat.
What?
In fact, it's on a booster seat.
It's not on a booster seat. What it is to even out our heights. So if you weren't so tall,
He's
it's
very
really-
sensible.
Yeah.
He's got his knees out.
I have got my knees out, which I'm quite
Well, I could.
self-conscious about.
It was either that or you get on a tiny stool. What would you prefer?
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of the Roundtable right here on Ickonic. We live in a, quite chaotic time across so many issues around the world. So many strong opinions, so many ill-informed opinions. And it seems everybody has one now, and usually they're not really based on any kind of research or information these days. They're just there and often repeated. The four of us, and Christiana, who will be here in future episodes, all have strong opinions of our own. Most of them are backed up by years and years of research and conversations with actual people, rather than just having an opinion without actually thinking about where it came from. In these episodes, we're going to talk about a number of different issues. We're going to throw ideas around, and we're going to take your questions as Ickonic members and lifetime members. So let's dive into this first episode. How are we doing, guys?
Good.
It's
Warm in here.
so hot in this studio.
Yeah.
For context, everyone but you has changed their clothing during the setup of this because they realised how hot it was, but you've come prepared.
I've taken my shoes and socks off. It is very hot.
I had a long sleeve shirt about 30 seconds ago, but it's gone. Right, so let's start with, there's various things we could start with in terms of issues on at the moment, but let's start with the Middle East, because that's just something that for millennia really has been something. You just made a documentary on it, literally going back to centuries ago, where it was still a very prominent thing. So this situation, as we sit here today, recording this, there seems to be a relative peace between Iran and Israel. There's a ceasefire that seems to be holding at the moment. Israel was still invading and murdering civilians in Gaza as we speak. 20 yesterday, they bombed a cafe on one of the beaches. And that's all of a sudden become quite forgotten because everyone was talking about Israel and Iran rather than what's going on in Gaza. So let's get like a status update from each of us on where we think things are at the moment and where they might go. Gaz, do you want to jump in first, mate?
For me, I would look at not necessarily the rhetoric that's being spoken, but what's happening. So at the minute, obviously, you've got Trump meets Netanyahu in a couple of days. They've had their pretend falling out. That seems to have kind of gone now. We're not sort of pretending to be at loggerheads anymore. Trump's talking about this peace deal, this ceasefire, how, we need to sort out what's going on in Gaza. We need to make this ceasefire hold with Iran, when at the same time announcing another large military aid delivery for Israel. Now, Netanyahu's not going to use them as ornaments. He's going to drop them on people, whether it be in Lebanon or Yemen or Iraq or Syria or Gaza or Iran, because that's how many countries they're basically bombing at the same time. So I would ignore the chat of Nobel Peace Prize for Donald Trump and all that kind of stuff and look at what's going on behind the scenes, which is there's a ceasefire which is allowing Israel to basically rearm themselves up to the eyeballs. Yeah, because I do believe, even though I think obviously above them, they're both puppet states, but at the same time, I do believe that Israel took more of a battering than they would care to admit. And I think when you look at the buildings in Beersheba, in Haifa, and particularly in Tel Aviv, they're not playing with the Houthi rebels in this. It's a much bigger thing.
Yeah, I think that's the reason for the ceasefire. That's the real reason for the ceasefire.
By time.
Because Israel, again, Netanyahu bravado, thought it was basically going to be relatively straightforward, and especially if he could manipulate America in. But what came back the other way showed that the Iron Dome is not so bloody iron. And like you say, a lot of damage was caused. We saw some of the damage, but a lot of it was censored, of course. And people weren't allowed to take pictures of it.
Did they ban foreign journalists as well?
They did. They arrested, I think it was an Al Jazeera crew were arrested for filming the damage.
Yeah. And so also, with every missile that came in, you need at least 2 to take them out with your Iron Dome interceptors. And so they were running out of interceptor missiles. And given what was happening, and given that, the damage was only going to get worse and worse and worse. Because, on that morning when the ceasefire was announced, very hurriedly, if you remember, it was probably the biggest impact on Israel of Iran missiles of the entire conflict. And so for me, it was on the phone, we need a ceasefire. And what they do is spin everything the opposite of what it really is. So as you say, suddenly people like Charlie Kirk, who's never seen a Trump post he didn't agree with, even if it was completely different to the last one, he talked about a Nobel Peace Prize for Donald Trump for apparently ending a conflict he helped to start. But for me, that was all spin and waffle. The real reason was Israel needed a breather and it needed to restock. And next time it goes for Iran, they'll want the Americans on board from day one.
Yeah. Well, that's what we've seen, haven't we, with the news the last few weeks. We covered it in Trending last week when the story first started to emerge that maybe those strikes by the B-2 bombers hadn't completely obliterated the Iranian nuclear program. And then the Israelis came out and said, we reserve the right to attack again if it's shown that. And then Trump said the same, we reserve the right to attack Iran again if it shows that actually that it's not been obliterated, damaged. And then that story has just evolved and evolved and evolved. And they're going to probably use that as a pretext, aren't they?
Yeah, but plus the fact, they said we're having the ceasefire because it's a done deal. Yeah, we've obliterated it. Yeah. And now it's like, well, maybe we didn't, or maybe they didn't. And so the whole thing is spin and lies. And the one thing when Trump's lips are moving is he's lying. I mean, he is the most, I mean, they all lie. Politicians all lie. And presidents all lie. But Trump is major league. I mean, he's out of anything I've ever seen in terms of lies. And so he's lying because he says the opposite of what he said before, day after day after day.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think they would reserve the right to take out Trump as well if everything they're doing to get consent doesn't work.
Well, we spoke about this yesterday, didn't we? There was obviously people have spoke for years about the Simpsons episode, haven't they? And they pointed that out, and they've also pointed out that not just a few months ago, Iran. There was a claim that Iran had a plot to attack him. A plot to take him out.
Yeah. And then that fatwa was issued.
The 2 assassination attempts.
I think the other thing as well is on a lower level, Netanyahu uses war to cling to power.
Yeah, he does.
And if you talk to Israelis, a lot of them that don't like him, in fact, most Israelis don't like him. They can't stand him for his policies on this and that and this and that and this and that. But his policy of keeping us safe from our enemies is, So that's why anytime it looks like he's going to go, suddenly he invades someone or whatever. So if he goes to, when you're talking about the ceasefire, if they had started being obliterated by the Iranians, he loses that one thing that he clings on to power with, which is he will keep us safe. Suddenly he's got nothing.
Well, but I don't think people realise how much money they've already sent them. In March of this year, it was $4 billion the US sent for the military alone in Israel. That was in March. Marco Rubio comes out and says, we won the war and a ceasefire. You funded it. 3 months ago, you came out and said that you $4 billion. Yeah. I mean, that's nothing to the 147 or 42 billion they've sent to Saudi Arabia, but that's another story. 4 billion. So the money's there. They're building up the stock. So it's not as if they've got to send loads more money. It's not as if you're going to see, we're going to fund a new round. They've got that money. As you say, I think they've depleted the stock, but the money is already there. And obviously that's come from the US taxpayer. The UK have funded in some airplane fighter jet parts.
Yeah, that's the thing also, that when you see these massive amounts of money being transferred, you know something's coming.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Because they're pre-funding it. You know, I mean, it's ridiculous. But I think that, you know, there's a whole new and a whole other level to this, which is missed because, for instance, the massive span, not all, but a massive span of the alternative media is looking at Trump, they're looking at Netanyahu, and they're looking at the supreme leader of Iran. But there's a level above them, which is orchestrating it. And if you know what their agenda is, then this starts to make sense, whereas maybe it doesn't if you just take it in isolation. And the Middle East has been such a blatant target for these people. There's something about that whole Middle East region, because only if you go back to 1991 and the attacks on Saddam Hussein under the Bush administration, and Father Bush, and then you look at the Iraq War, you look at Libya, you look at what's happened in Syria, you look at the constant conflict involving the Israelis. There's something about that whole area that they want to maintain constant disruption within. And, you know, imagine, I mean, if you just go onto an energetic level, imagine what the energy field of the Middle East is like. I mean, the conflict, not just the conflict with the Israelis, but the inter-Arab conflicts, the ISIS conflicts, the Al-Qaeda conflicts, all of which connect into the US and Israel as well. And that whole energy field that people are living their lives in must be, I mean, you go into an old like house where there's been a lot of bad things go on, and you kind of feel it and you're affected by it. You think, oh my God, I don't like it here. Oh dear, bad vibes. Imagine what the Middle East must be like after decade after decade after decade of chaos, conflict, and war. And that will affect people too. But what I think is so indicative of the whole the whole scenario that has gone on through my lifetime is that you can almost encapsulate it in what's happening this week at Glastonbury. A guy stands up and, you know, he's obviously a bit of a prat.
5 minutes of fame.
Yeah, fine. But the emphasis on what someone says against what Israel does was an extraordinary highlighting of what's happened through my lifetime, which is that there is a rule for Israel, and that rule is Israel is the victim. That's it. End of story. There's no other story to be told.
Yeah, it's a really good point that I wanted to bring up there, is that the real damage to Israel hasn't necessarily been military damage, although it has. It's their image. That you can't build that back up anymore. They're out in the open, which if you look into the Messianic stuff, that's part of the story. The nations will rise up against Israel. They want that to happen. Unfortunately, the people of Israel are going to suffer, the general people. But the real damage to Israel now is that in terms of the governments, I'm not talking about the people, unfortunately, is that they're out in the open. The real damage, that's irreparable now. So they've got to go for it now, I think.
Well, it's kind of interesting because of, you know, what's happened in my life. I go back to 1995 and I published a book called And the Truth Shall Set You Free, in which I was challenging Israel. And from that time onwards, obviously efforts were made, as you well know, around the world to ban my meetings. I'm banned from 30 European countries, Australia, for all that. But what I'm seeing now are things being said about Israel by, actually, ironically, as you remember, the Labour Party under Corbyn and what have you, was trying to get my meetings banned. And now Labour Party people and left-wing people are saying more extreme things than ever I said. And so you're right, it's suddenly become acceptable to speak the truth. Obviously, you've got the establishment kicking back with this guy at Glastonbury. But I think people are starting to realize with the horrors, the daily horrors in Gaza, that this claim to victimhood is not only a nonsense, it's been a ruse all along.
Yep.
Because if you condemn, as I do, what the Nazis did, then don't act like them then, and expect people to think, oh, you're still the victim. And I saw a clip this week. It was on this Good Morning show on ITV, where the interviewer asked a real softball question of this a Jewish lady spokeswoman. And she went straight, and it was all obviously about Glastonbury, and she went straight into victim mode. And I've seen this again and again and again with Starmer and all these people. And I think the guy on the stage has had his visa.
He's had his tour in America cancelled.
Yeah.
Label have dropped him, haven't they?
Yeah. And so you've got that response. But among the general public who are aware of what's happening in Gaza, Israel's claim to victimhood now is sounding increasingly hollow and ridiculous.
Yeah.
And this woman was the same. It was like, it's outrageous what's been said. And I saw a post by some celebrity who's Jewish saying, I'm very fearful of what's happening. And I replied and I said, well, this fear, is it the same fear as Palestinian kids under bombs who are being deprived of food because Israel wants them dead? Is that the level of fear you feel? And I've been trying to call Israel out on this basis since the mid-90s, and suddenly it's becoming more and more acceptable to say it, which is a good thing. I know there's ulterior motives for it, but it's a good thing because at least the ridiculousness of the Israeli position can be exposed now.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a couple of aspects to it. You spoke about it yesterday, didn't you? Which is when there's a genuine concern and a genuine calling out of something that's actually happening, they then lie. So as Dad said about, they're getting offended by this guy's words, they're also saying things that he didn't actually say to create drama and effect. I mean, you've been to Gaza, you've been to the West Bank a good few years ago now.
I've not been to Gaza.
I thought, sorry, not Gaza. You've been to Palestine. You've been to the West Bank, didn't you? When you went over and played beach soccer.
I went been to East Jerusalem.
You saw it firsthand. What was going on?
Yeah, it's
before.
A long time before. You got Israeli guys just walking around with, AK-47s around them. Just regular guys just walking around with guns for a laugh. It's a bizarre place. It's a very strange place. I remember one of the lads thought it was dead funny. He bought a T-shirt that said "Uzi does it," and it had a picture of a gun with Israel written in the middle of it. It's like celebrating this kind of war mentality. It's very, very strange. But I would say in terms of this stuff, and I know Dad spoke about this before, in terms of you're saying about like rearming. So you've got this ceasefire, so all these huge payments of money are going over to Israel now, that of weapons. It's clearly for something that's coming. I would suggest
plus the $1 trillion budget for the Pentagon as well.
Yeah, and I would suggest that this vilification of Bob Villan and others, Kneecap and all these others, to almost certainly pass legislation or at least to normalise the cancellation of people so that actually people then become fearful to speak, is also preemptive.
I just think it's too late.
For something else that's coming.
Well, you said this years ago.
Yeah, it is preemptive.
When they were attacking Corbyn.
This is Trump's targeting of anti-Semitism on campuses and what have you. It is preemptive. But I agree with you, Rich. I think to a large extent it's passed. It's passed the line. It's crossed the line because the horrors in Gaza are so shockingly, staggeringly horrific that I think they'll do they'll have a real job shutting people up now.
Yeah, I don't think they will. I really don't think they will. Just little things that people can point out and just keep pushing forward with that. Like even the word Semitic doesn't even mean what they'd say it means. No. Semitic means a group of languages largely Arabic, which the Palestinians
are
speak.
Semitic people.
The Palestinians are Semitic people. So everything. So you can go off the back of that and say everything you believe in being told by the IDF, not the Israeli people. They're protesting against him as well because they're the ones getting bombed because they stick their Mossad bloody buildings in the middle of Tel Aviv. You can say that everything that they say is reversible. Literally, you are calling them anti-Semitic for us standing up for Semitic people in that terminology, which is the Gazans, because everything they do, as you've said for many, many years, David, is they invert it. It's an inversion, it's a satanic inversion of everything. So that psychology, getting into people to understand, you just flip it round. That's just as important, maybe more so than people understanding the facts and the history. Is look, they're telling you this is probably the reverse.
Well, it's the whole Nazi thing, wasn't it? Accuse the other side of that which you're guilty, which they used to do. And I think one thing that I think is really important with what we do, and one of the things personally I'm really, really proud of that we do as a channel is we're consistent on calling out behaviour. We're not necessarily looking at who's doing it. And I remember when this conflict started, the latest one with Iran, I remember somebody tweeting, I think it was you guys that replied, somebody posted a video of a bomb hitting a building in Tel Aviv, and they said, this is Tel Aviv day 1, who wants to see what it looks like day 100? And I remember, I think you replied saying, well, hopefully,
don't want to see any of it.
Does now.
Don't want to see any of it.
I don't want to see any conflict on any sides. And I think, we spoke about it yesterday on training, didn't we? That if he'd have said death to the Russian army, everyone would have been
No one would have said a word.
No one would have said a word. Whereas I think for us, we're talking about war, conflict, devastation on any side has no place. And what they have done very well over the years, to be fair, Israel, and I think it's starting to wane now, as we've discussed, is they've associated the IDF with the Israeli population, whereas in any other country, that's not the case. People in this country, or anyone that called out the invasion of Iraq, are not called anti-British. They're called anti-British military intervention, same in America, whereas Israel, the IDF is aligned with the people, in the minds of people. So you say you shouldn't drop bombs. Oh, you say Jewish people should.
I think
you've not said that though. You've not said those words.
The name is important now. The name is important because there's a lot of power in words, and that military, which is an offensive military, which attacks countries all over the shop, is called the Israeli Defense Forces, and I don't think that's an accident either.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Because just by hearing that, you're like, oh, they're defending their country, when they're not. They're an offensive force.
Yeah, I think we've seen this. I think you mentioned it in one of your posts, Gaz, this week about the fact that this guy was talking about the IDF. He wasn't talking about Jewish people. He never mentioned Jewish people. Kill Jewish people, but they spin it immediately. Oh, he's saying death to all Jews. Now that makes me smile because that's what I've had since the mid-90s, where you're calling out the actions of the Israeli government and the actions of the IDF, the actions of Mossad, but it's spun as if you are saying that all Jewish people are doing that. And it's not only is it a blatant defense mechanism, it's an abuse of Jewish people in general.
It is.
Because you're using them, and there's a reason for that, because the people that run Israel are not really on the side of Jewish people, say the least. They are using that to hide behind. I remember that in the protocols of the Elders of Zion, they talked about the Freemasons being a show army that they could hide behind to manipulate. It's the Freemasons. No, actually, it's not the Freemasons. It's the inner core that's manipulating that secrecy. And it's the same with this whole thing with the way they plant this idea that you're criticizing all Jewish people or calling for all Jewish people to be killed. It's obvious what they're doing, but also it's an abuse of Jewish people.
Well,
many of which actually oppose this.
Well, that was what I was going to add. Is they are not. There's no one they are more aggressive against than Jewish people that say what you've just said.
Oh yes,
they absolutely abuse.
And Jewish people that refuse to fight in the IDF who get the water cannon treatment. Yeah.
Well, that was the excuse. The minister Liz Kendall did a speech today. She was talking about she's the example I said earlier about lying about what he said. She's used that example to say that he said all Jews because they have conscription. So therefore, all Jewish people in Israel will be forced to be in the IDF at some point. Therefore, by saying death to the IDF, you're saying death to all Jewish people.
Then you go.
She literally associated those.
Of course she did.
But she's not born Jewish.
No, they're not.
Jewish is a faith.
Yeah.
So that doesn't make sense either. So then you can start to take apart their arguments, because if Jewish is a faith, then anyone can convert to Judaism as sabotage, if you've converted to Islam, then that's not a given status. You grow up in a Jewish household, but it's a belief system.
It's a belief system.
So that's it doesn't. So everything is blurred. Everything is blurred. So they'll take something like the Kabbalah, and that's got 3 or 4 different versions of it, hidden behind each other. So they hide behind everything the same way. Look at their behaviour. The same way they hide their buildings in Tel Aviv, right in the middle of everyone, using human shields that they tell everyone accusing everyone else to do.
Yeah.
They use the Jewish people as human shields. They use faith as a human shield. Everything is a shield. The Freemasons lower level, blue levels, human shields. The upper levels, what do they want? The same things that this cult wants. Solomon's Temple, Messianic Age, Greater Israel Project. I mean, their outcomes are the same. So they hide behind loads of different layers of things. And what are they? They're like a virus in between it.
And when you can show through history, they've chucked the Jewish people under the bus, whether it's the Russian Revolution, whether it's the Holocaust, whether it's now.
When you talk about
where is the COVID vaccine?
Yeah, whether it's now.
The Holocaust denier, you're not a Holocaust denier. I'm questioning who was behind it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, if Iran, go full scale and retaliate to a high level, who's going to be the ones that are going to suffer? It's going to be regular Jewish Israelis.
Who were banned from leaving, while Netanyahu, who started the whole thing by chucking the first rocket, was off to Greece with his pina colada on the beach.
In Athens.
Just a final one on this before we move on. Do you think that what we're seeing now has been because a lot of people on the right, the anti-immigration guys, particularly when it comes to the UK and America, they tend to be massively on the side of the Israelis. And I think my take on it is that the reason for that is they are associating people crossing the channel who are predominantly, particularly in this country, predominantly Muslim, with the Palestinians. So they see them one of the same. So they see people that are coming over the channel, coming in illegally, claiming benefits, and in some cases committing crime. We don't know who they are. And that is a concern, genuine concern. And we're one of the very few people and groups who would say that's a genuine concern while also saying what's happening in Gaza is disgraceful. Most people pick a side on one or the other. Do you think that's been done deliberately over the last few years where, people associate terrorism with Muslims, people associate people coming, societies and towns and villages and cities changing with Islam, to then, it's only Muslims that are getting attacked by Israel.
Well, yeah, but
so why are we bothered? Do you think they've done that on purpose?
Yeah, and they're very quiet when a Christian church is bombed, whether it be in Syria or whether it be in Gaza.
A village last week.
Yeah, they don't care. I think that's part of it. I think the whole 9/11 thing was part of it, which I find hilarious in the sense that most people, I think, on the right in the United States would admit that 9/11 was an inside job in one form or another. So they don't believe that Muslim hijackers committed 9/11, but they still hate Muslims for committing 9/11.
Except Charlie Kirk, he tweeted about it, didn't he? When that was.
Oh yeah, but he took a pasting for that tweet.
Well, Shapiro did it the other week, didn't he? Shapiro said, "I don't care who did 9/11" when he was asked about Israeli involvement. It's like, well, I'm sure you don't, mate.
Oh yeah,
you know where it points.
If it came out, you'd care, Ben.
Well, Sigel of Saturn, IXXI.
I think if you also look at it at another level. By the way, I was on a television program once with Liz Kendall.
Oh God, I remember
BBC.
it. I remember it. Andrew Neil, wasn't it? And Portillo.
Yeah, is there life on Liz Kendall? I saw no evidence of it whatsoever. Now she's a government minister. But of course you put your dopes in power because then they'll do what you want. But I remember that the only time I've been to Israel, because they wouldn't let me in now, of course.
Certainly wouldn't let you out.
No, they wouldn't. They might like me to go in, so I could not be let out. But and I remember going to Temple Mount, where the big mosque is and what have you. And when you go into the old city of Jerusalem, which is behind a big wall, you've got the sprawl of Jerusalem out from that. It's very small, and it's broken up into quarters. It's broken up into a Christian quarter, a Armenian quarter, a Muslim quarter, and a Jewish quarter, and they're very close. And I remember watching these Muslim kids playing football in the Temple Mount area, And it just dawned on me as I was watching them that they would have, by that time, they're only, little kids, they would have a certain view of Jewish people, a certain view of life, of God, of religion. And yet, if those kids literally had been born down the street in the Jewish quarter or the Christian quarter, they would at the same time now have a very different view of Muslim people, of Jewish people, Christian people, and God and, religion. And if you look at, on one level of what's happening in the Middle East, it's the creation of religions which are fiercely enforced, and you play them off against each other. It's really very simple. And what I've done, I've just nearly finished a new book. I've looked in part of it very deeply at the backgrounds to these religions, and it is almost funny when you see how they were created on the basis of what they were created on. And I'm talking Christianity, I'm talking Judaism, I'm talking Islam. And how the fierceness of the belief system can be played off against each other. And the fact that the belief system is enforced through fear. So Muslims fear the vengeance of Allah if they don't do what he says, like pointing to Mecca 5 times a day. Christians, I saw a post, again, Charlie Kirk's getting a few mentions here, but I saw a post from him the other day where he said that about God has compassion for those who fear him. It's like, what?
That doesn't make any sense.
What did I miss? So this character wants you to fear him, and then he's got compassion. And if you don't fear him, well, he'll slaughter you, like in the Old Testament.
Sounds quite narcissistic, that, doesn't it?
I mean, it is extraordinary. But this perceptual religious divide is played off. So, for instance, so many Christians in America, not least also around the world, but particularly in America, they support Israel. I mean, classic recently, Ted Cruz, in that interview with Tucker Carlson, the senator, and these other people in the MAGA who are completely obsessed with religion, where they support Israel because God says in the Old Testament that you'll be blessed if you support Israel. And we shouldn't lose sight of the way that religious belief and this religious certainty and fear of retribution for not believing is being used to divide the Middle East along very, very religious grounds. So you've got Netanyahu quoting the Old Testament.
Yeah, we can do this.
About the Amalekites or whatever they're called.
Amaleks, yeah.
And then you've got Trump, right? I mean, the only Bible he's interested in is the Trump Bible, which he flogs for a fantastic bloody prophet. But now he's found bloody God. And you play that off against the Muslims and the supreme leader in Iran, and you go, this is the foundation of the divide, and unless we sort it out by just taking a breath and saying, hold on a minute, what's going to happen now is I'm going to let my belief system and how I see things be dictated and being decided by the evidence, and not because that's all I've ever been told. Yeah. So if you look at religion, you look at most people who are Hindus, they were brought up in a Hindu family. You look at most people in the southern states of America who are become Christian, they're born into a Christian family. The Middle East, they're brought up Muslim. And if you took those same kids, and going back to that example in Jerusalem, you take those same kids and you birth them in the southern states, you birth them in India or whatever, they will now have a completely different religious belief. It's been indoctrinated because that's all they've ever heard and all they've ever been told. And we really have to, this is why Ickonic's so fantastic, is it looks at the evidence and it doesn't take belief systems just because that's what we've always been told to believe. It looks at the evidence and it looks at it in a dispassionate way that says, okay, you say this happened and that happened thousands of years ago. Where's the evidence?
Yeah.
And I can tell you from researching this, there ain't any.
No.
Well, most religions behave like cults as well, in the sense of, I've no problem if people want to believe what they want to believe. Just don't impose it on others. And also, the key one is don't then impose it on your kids. Because how many people that grew up in devout households or whatever religion hated it as a kid, but then grow up and then when they become parents, they do exactly the same thing to their kids. Whereas, and in certain religions where it's quite extreme, they have people ostracized if they choose to live their life slightly differently. That would be a massive place to start, where each generation just decide for themselves whether they believe or follow something. They're not pushed into something because mum and dad will hate me if I don't do this. And you can apply that to not just religion. Mum wants me to become a doctor. If I don't become one, she'll be disappointed. It's just disgraceful in my opinion.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember as a kid when I first heard the phrase God-fearing. And I thought, why? Why? What are you worshipping a god for? I want you to fear him.
It's
It's ridiculous.
It's messed up when you think about it.
It's all messed up. All the religions are messed up, and they're based on fresh air. If we're going to take our minds back, we have to take our minds back from religion. I don't care what religion it is.
To answer your question at the start of about them being pitted off against each other, do you think that the Muslims have been made out to be,
The bad guys.
guys? If you take they'll always tell you, as your dad always says, they'll always tell you, if you take the story of the Behemoth versus the Goliath, Leviathan and Behemoth, they clash together. So you have the East and West. They have them together clashing each other. One's a land power, one's a water power. But in the middle, there's another character that many people don't talk about called Ziz, Z-I-Z. And it's this eagle thing that comes down, picks on the remains. He stirs the pot.
Yeah.
So what's happening is this Sabbatean cult, which what I would say is, as far as I can take it, but it obviously goes off planet and depends on what you believe, they're stirring the pot. So you're going to have the East and West pitted against each other, and then this cult is going to come along and take the pickings out. And that's that story, Leviathan, Behemoth, land power, water power, and the Ziz, the eagle that swoops down, picks out all the bones of the rest of the two. That's the story. That's triangulation. That's all it is.
See, that's exactly what I was saying earlier about there's another level.
Yeah.
That's the level that's playing them like a stringed instrument,
Exactly,
like a violin.
Well, that segues us nicely into the next subject, which is the state of the play here in the UK. Because what we're seeing and have seen over the last few years is exactly that. And what I was saying about the demonisation of Muslims kind of ties in again as well to the UK and the subject, because we're all British, we've all lived here our entire lives, we've all seen the country change in a number of ways, and I can't think of one I could describe that's a change for the better, whether that be safer streets or less safe streets, whether that be public services, whether that be the health service, whether that be the education system, whether that be the amount of money that people have in their pocket, rents, mortgages, everything that you want to look at to describe whether a country is going in the right direction or the wrong direction. The UK is going in the wrong direction. And one of the big things that was talked about in the last election, which obviously hasn't happened, was the need to control borders, the need to know who is in the country and who is coming into the country. And a lot of the reasons for that is because it's been allowed to get so out of control on purpose to create chaos and create that division. And then one catalysing event, like we saw last year in Southport, creates utter chaos in the weeks that follow, because it's like, you were saying there about picking the bones. You create an environment. If you fill a room full of gas, nothing's going to happen. Someone puts a match in there, it's going. And that's what they've done here in the UK. They've filled the country with gas, and one match sets it off, as we saw in 10, 20 cities. We saw riots in the streets, we saw chaos, we've seen people still in jail now. And as we spoke about last week, I think that's just still there. One more or one other event, and that's going to happen again.
Yeah. I think it's about corralling people into two particular
circles in the sense that when we spoke about this before, I think there is a growing objection to the status quo.
Yeah. Doesn't work.
People can call it the awakening, whatever, but I think that is out there. I think COVID massively amplified it because once you could see things, you don't unsee them. And I think you've got an element of society which is sat at home watching Bargain Hunt, not bothered, or even if they do know that stuff's a bit rubbish, well, what can I do anyway? They're fine for the establishment, they're not a problem. And so then you've got this large portion of people which are starting to see that there's a problem. Now, what I think they're doing is corralling those people into violence, into being so angry and so disillusioned that they don't care anymore. And so you create this situation where you've got the Bargain Hunt watchers, they're fine, and then you've got another group of people which are chucking rocks at coppers and whatever, they're fine as well, because you can make examples of them, you can bring in legislation, using them as an excuse to impose it on everyone else and all that kind of stuff. So I think the chaos that's being caused is on purpose.
Yeah.
And
order out of chaos.
Yeah, and I see stories all the time. Like, for instance, a couple of days ago, there was a member of a grooming gang who's been deported back to Pakistan, but he's gone back to Pakistan with £250,000 of UK taxpayers' money, and he's bought a massive house in Pakistan and living the life of Riley. Now, that's all on the front page news. Everyone is understandably kicking off about it. You know, that's there on purpose. Yeah. It's supposed to make you angry.
Outrage, yeah.
It's supposed to make you wound up to the point where you will snap.
Yeah, because I think innately we feel a huge sense of misjustice, which we do.
Yeah, and well, they've done it with the Bob Villain thing. How many people that are now calling for Bob Villain to be imprisoned and all that would not have been doing it if Lucy Connolly wasn't in prison?
Yeah,
let's look at that from a Jewish perspective then, in terms of their faith. They've been given the same. We are ostracised from the rest of the world. The world hates us, you know, we are treated badly. They've been given the same programming. So they grow up feeling disenchanted, feeling abused. So they have a legitimate, in their mind, feeling like they're the same way you feel, the same way we all feel. So they actually just use the same programming
tactic, it works.
Across the board that we all feel, but because we all are getting trampled on by those who shouldn't be in power, but they'll use it to play each other off you because they won't take responsibility of us. So even those of the Jewish faith go, well, you're not ostracised. We don't mind what you do. We don't really care. But they've been brainwashed as much as we've been brainwashed that the Muslims are coming over here and stealing our jobs and all. There's an element of truth to everything.
Yeah, there is.
But it's always exasperating.
And you can apply the LGBTQ for that as well.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, everyone hates us. No one does. Just get
make
on with
them
it.
victims or make them villains.
Well, that's the point.
One.
Yeah. If someone says I'm gay and you go, cool, don't care, mate. That should be the pinnacle. You should be happy with that. That's great. No one cares, mate. You do you. But it's gone, obviously it goes completely the other way.
Yeah, because you have to create victims.
Yeah,
you have
exactly.
To set a sense of victimhood. I remember, in Israel, it's an art form. I remember seeing a kind of a documentary type video done by a Jewish guy in Israel some years ago. I've tried to find it again.
Oh, defamation.
I don't remember what it was called.
Yeah,
It's called defamation.
It's
It's
about
very
school
good.
kids.
Yeah.
About school kids,
Yeah.
And the way that they are indoctrinated from birth. And I remember this girl he was talking to. She, I don't know what she'd be, 16, 17, something like that. A bit older maybe. She said, we know the world hates us. I don't hate Jewish people.
No.
I will challenge what the Israeli government's doing, but I don't hate Jewish people. But when you're brought up, and again, we go back to what I said about being brought up in a Hindu family or a Christian family or a Muslim family, you get the indoctrination. So Jewish people are brought up to fear Muslims, to fear the rest of the world. Muslim people are brought up to fear the Israelis, and you can understand why, given the background and the history. And what we need to do, surely, is to start judging our view of people by their behavior and not by the color of their skin or the nature of their religion.
Individual behavior as well.
So,
individual behaviour, absolutely.
I've been to the Middle East a few times, Israel only once, and I've met some really manipulative, corrupt Arab people, and I've met some of the nicest people you'll ever meet in your life, who'd give you anything, even though they had very little. And so the way that we are told to see everything is in black and white, literally in this case, black and white. So the people that are calling for deportation of Muslim people, they see things in black and white, and Muslim people see things in black and white. So coming across in these boats will be people who just want a better life. I mean, we may say, well, hold on a minute, you know, the house is full or whatever, but they just want a better life. And also coming across in the boats will be some very despicable characters. And but we kind of just paint every group as a whole rather than seeing them as individuals. But what I would say is, and I would say this about the British Empire as well, if you're going to go into another country, then, you know, have some respect for the culture that you're going into. What the British Empire did, it went in there and it just exploited those countries for its own ends, for resources and what have you.
Still does now, though, through proxies.
Yeah, and so you had the Western lifestyle sought to be imposed upon these colonial countries and Western ways of doing things. And I don't think that's right either. You know, if there's a culture you're going into, well, okay, you're a right to your opinion, but have some respect.
Yeah.
And I say that to people coming into Britain and into America. Have some respect. And often you don't see that. I mean, I've seen interviews with people migrants who've gone into Sweden, for instance. And the arrogance that they have, that their lifestyle and their religion should predominate, that Sharia law should be the norm, where they go around telling women that their skirt's too short or whatever.
Yeah.
It's none of their bloody business. But it's this arrogance that because you have a belief system, have it. None of my business, mate. But my belief system must be imposed on everybody else because my belief system is right. My God is right. Mine's the right God. And if you're at this level orchestrating it, I mean, you're laughing, aren't you?
Yeah.
Because you've got constant conflict and upheaval. And so I look at you know, the people that are attacking the migrants verbally, and I look at the migrants who are attacking the indigenous population, and when they come in, I look at them as the same. They don't realize they're mirrors of each other, and they're just the same mentality in a different body. And as I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, this guy on the stage in Glastonbury not only sort of said what he said, it's caused all the outrage, but he also said, I hear you want your country back. Well, sorry, you're not having it.
Yeah, we can't have that.
And it's like, excuse me, you know, what unbelievable arrogance. He's a right to say it, and I want him to say it if that's what he believes, because I want to know, you know, I want this out in the open. But there's arrogance on all sides, and if we don't sort of calm that down on all sides, then exactly what you've been describing will happen. The blue touch paper will be lit whenever they choose. And there's another thing, you know, in all this, which is worth just a quick mention, and that is a long time ago. They worked out, I mean, this is back in the 50s at least, they worked out that certain frequencies elicit certain emotions, because those emotions they want to elicit operate on those frequencies. So if you play or if you feel the emotion, you generate the frequency. But if you broadcast that frequency across a community, you also elicit that emotion. One creates the other. And, if they want to target an area, this is not kind of far out supposition. It's what they do. They can play or broadcast frequencies, obviously unseen frequencies, across a community, and absolutely wind people up into a frenzy or a fury, which is just waiting for a trigger. And then they provide the trigger, and bang, upheaval, riots. And you hear people say, well, that was a bit over the top, wasn't it? That reaction? Well, no, not if it was premeditated or prepared in the way that I'm describing. They do this.
Yeah, they absolutely do. And I think also the groupthink attitude is very important, that one person goes, two go, three go, four go. Like, we said this yesterday, didn't we? That when that guy starts chanting that, we'd have all looked at each other and gone, what are you doing? We were saying again, we've been in Czech Republic when there's been monkey chants when a black player gets on the ball, and you're looking around going, what the hell is going on? But how many people just sort of joined in with that because it was a chant and someone said it and there was a stage, and they probably retrospectively look back now and be like, what the fuck was I chanting?
Yeah, I mean, there's an element.
And probably the same with the riots. You'll get people that would have got involved because somebody else did, and it looked fun, and someone's got a new pair of trainers from Foot Locker. Yeah, that sort of thing.
There was an irony as well to the Bob Villan stuff, like you were saying, because he speaks out for Palestinians. It's not the first time he's spoken out for Palestinians, who have basically had their land and their culture and their existence erased over the last 78 years. Whilst then systematically in the same set at Glastonbury, mocking British people who are concerned about the fact that they're losing.
It's such a good point.
It's very strange to not realise that. Yeah.
But that just creates a cognitive breakdown in people's minds.
Well, it's okay when we do it. It seems to be the.
But if you're in an abusive relationship, they'll do one thing and they'll do exactly the opposite, and you'll get punished for both. Yeah. And you won't know which way to go. So what happens? You freeze.
Well, that's what they want.
Just tell me what you want. Tell me what to do.
The last one I want to touch on before we go to member questions to do with the UK is, on the surface of it, and we've touched on this on the morning show, Starmer's looking quite weak at the moment. His position's looking quite perilous. There was reports about, they're the most disliked, distrusted government in the first year in British political history. Alongside that, he's had to U-turn on the winter fuel payments. He's had a huge defeat and had to U-turn on this welfare bill. There's now on the petition website that the government have, there's now nearly 3.5 million people signed a petition calling for a general election. There's been an explosion in the support for reform, and all the polls suggest that they will win the next election. They got absolutely rinsed at the local council elections a few weeks ago. There's council elections, I believe, in May next year, which they're very much gearing up for a huge defeat on. Do you think this is something that's just manufactured, or do you think he genuinely, maybe there is a number two, whether it's someone like Rayner or somebody else who's going to come in to replace him?
I am of the opinion at the minute that I think they want reform to be the next government. I think reform is their trump.
Yeah, I'd agree completely. Yeah.
I think, allow Starmer, whether or not they replace Starmer for another Labour leader in between the two, flip a coin.
They can't win the next election.
No, I don't think they will. And I don't think they care. I think they try and get as much through the door as they possibly can. Think about what they've done already with the assisted dying bill, with the infanticide bill, legalising the killing of a baby up until birth, and all that. Like this online harms bill, which was a Tory construct, despite them calling out censorship the other day. It's hilarious. And now calling for the censorship of Bob Villan and Kneecap, obviously.
Immigration, they just opened the doors.
Yeah, for 14 years, did nothing about the grooming gangs. Now they call for grooming gang inquiries when they could have done one in 14 years, didn't do one because they're all the same. But he's already putting through stuff. Stuff's already going. Miliband has been given an absolute blank piece of paper to do what he likes. When we did the cycle, how many fields did we see of solar farms? We were commenting on it the whole time. They're literally everywhere. Well. He's now vowed today to quadruple the amount of wind farms, to the point where an area more than twice the size of Birmingham, which is Britain's second largest city, will be covered in solar farms, including reservoirs and
floating solar panels.
Floating solar panels in reservoirs and lakes. And you go, okay, well, silicon can cause infertility in women, silicon nanoparticles, and you're going to stick them on top of the water supply. All right. So I think, they're going to get in as much stuff as they want. So then they're going to create a point where everyone says something's got to change. We need to do something about it. Step in, reform. Yeah. Everyone will go back to the polling booth, not learnt from anything, back to the polling booth, give it to Reform, and Reform, who have already, they voted for the assisted dying bill, their MPs. They voted for the infanticide bill, their MPs. They were openly talking about ID cards and digital ID and all this stuff, the BRIC card and the crushing to combat immigration.
They're pro-Israel?
They're hugely pro-Israel. And you've got Isabel Oakeshott, the journalist, who is basically Mrs. Richard Tice, she's his media mouthpiece, really, coming out today saying that, predictably, that basically if we're going to police Twitter in terms of this is why Lucy Connolly's in prison, then we should definitely be policing Glastonbury. So what you're saying is, here's a wrong, so what we should do is we should counteract it with another wrong, which was always what they were going to do.
Mm-hmm. You see, when you say that Reform is the UK's Trump, I think that's absolutely right. Of course, Farage is a big mate of Trump. So my take on Trump was that you had a big group of people who were pushing back on the conspiracy, who were pushing back on AI control, etc. And what they needed was to bring them on board. So they produced this guy, Trump, who is telling them what they want to hear. But he's doing all the things that they once pushed back on. And we're seeing now, as I predicted before he came to power the second time, the big push for AI. I mean, this big, beautiful bill, as he calls it, if it goes through, will ban the states from regulating AI for 10 years, by which time the control system will be in. And so you now need to bring the pushbackers on board in the UK. They are extremely dismissive of the Tories and the Conservatives, understandably. They're really dismissive of Starmer and the Labour Party, which is not a Labour Party at all, not the one I was brought up with anyway. And so you need someone to come in who's going to tell that pushbacker group, of which is getting bigger, as you say, what they want to hear. Yeah. But at the same time, you're telling them what they want to hear. What you're actually doing is everything that the system wants.
Yep.
Yeah.
And when we reach the point of realization that the political system is there to divert us from the reality that a handful can't control 8 billion if the 8 billion won't cooperate. If we don't see that, we'll go on voting our way into total dystopia. Because what you're trying to do is get people who collectively have the power through non-cooperation to change everything. Mm-hmm. I mean, like I've said many times, if you come out of the White House or Downing Street and say, we've had a discussion, this is what we're going to do. If enough people say, we're not doing it, where's their power? They have no power to impose it if enough people say we're not doing it. You started to see this with the massive demonstrations that we were involved in COVID, absolutely right. And so what you've got to do is manipulate people to give that potential power away to someone that you own and control.
Or redirect it.
Yeah, and that's politics. So, I remember being in Ukraine in 2010, and I was interviewed on a few programs, and at that point, the man in charge, Yanukovych, was the same man that had been thrown out in a revolution. I think it was the Orange Revolution in 2004, something like that. What had happened is he'd been elected. They challenged the legitimacy of the election, as I remember. And eventually there was a revolution and they put someone else in power. And then they didn't like that guy. And when they got to the next election, Yanukovych is still leading the opposition party. So to get the guy out that they put in but didn't want, they had to vote for Yanukovych. So they voted back in a guy that they pushed out with the revolution. And then they have another revolution actually orchestrated from the United States that got Yanukovych out the second time. And
Poroshenko in, didn't it?
And he went off to, Yanukovych went off to Russia. But what I'm saying is this: if you're going to get out this party, which you don't like, you've got to vote for this party. And when they don't do what you want, and they do the same as that party, then if you're going to get them out, you've got to vote for this party.
Yeah.
And it's a trap. It's a blatant trap. Because what you're doing is saying, you do it for me. When what needs to happen is we say, no, we're not cooperating with our own enslavement. But this is the importance of, we've talked about with religion and etc., of divide and rule. Because you divide and rule, that unity of response, we're not doing it. Because you create a situation where that your target population is fighting among itself.
What I think is also...
Sorry, I just want to say about reform, just quickly. I said about redirecting that energy and that power and that is with reform we're going to come in. And then if you're going to get the scenario I talked about earlier, when you're going to have the Leviathan behemoth go against the West, against the East, well, what you want is a united UK. You want them, but you're just going to direct it off in that direction. So that's what's going to happen. They've tried it in the US and people still... I think right now is that you can't do that because Israel have completely destroyed their global, marketing campaign, if you want to call it brand. But you can go after the Muslims and you can help out because they're going to come over here, or the Russians or the Chinese. But you do need a party now to combine, bring the UK people together, and they're all angry. I'm sure Tory Robertson will come out and he'll play his role in that, and they'll be sent off to war for something that's nothing to do with them. It's not actually, they're just being manipulated. But you can feel it, like they're turning the heat up on the gas stove at the moment with it.
What I think is really important as well that's happened, we've all discussed this separately, is they've associated the problem with the left. The deep state, the woke ideology, the geopolitical, all these bad things that we're talking about, they're all coming out of the left.
Which are real.
So therefore the right must be the saviour. And I actually completely agree with what you said earlier, Gaz, about they don't care about getting re-elected. That's not the plan. I think this is about destroying the perception of the left. Because if you think about all the ideas that we've discussed today and all of our separate ideologies would have been left-wing ideologies 50 years ago, in the sense of, liberal, freedom of speech, they were all left-wing. Yet now, you associate the left with carnage, you associate it with open borders, with aborting babies up to whatever, you associate it with BLM and these insane things.
The left has become very authoritarian.
And they've done it in America. And that's why in the last election you had such an overwhelming victory for a supposedly right-wing candidate. I think they're doing the same here, where, because the Tories were never right of centre, there was no sort of supposedly right-wing party. You've created one now, and by destroying any perception of the left being the saviour for anything, you're going to bring in the right. So I think that's being done on purpose as well.
Yeah, but they know the pendulum swing's coming. People think that a lot of these pendulum swings are organic. Something happens and then people react to it. But it's like, but if you control both sides, you can just keep, whether it be, in control of the right, and the right is doing this and the right is doing that, then suddenly this pendulum swing comes back. So you've got a big authoritarian right wing where you're not free to do what you want to do. You know, homosexuality is banned. All these things that happen in these countries. Then the pendulum swing finally comes back, and it's like, no, we've finally got acceptance. There's that, and then a period of time will go on where suddenly the left wing becomes so bizarre, where it's not about whether you're free to be gay anymore. Now it's giving puberty blockers to kids, and now it's cutting body parts off kids, and legalizing abortion up until birth and all this kind of, and then what happens is the pendulum swing thing comes back the other way.
I think that's absolutely right, Gaz. You know, I shake my head when I see people like Alex Jones, who once talked about the one-party state, saying that the deep state is the Democrats. I mean, that is so ludicrous.
Oh, it's embarrassing because he knows that's not true as well.
But also, you know, as I said many, many times in recent years, the central core of the alternative media has been hijacked. It's been hijacked by the MAGA media and the Trump media. But if I look at the personalities that have come in since COVID, they've come in from outside into this to basically take over the alternative media. They've invariably come in originally from being anti-woke. And so what you've had is this extreme move of the pendulum to the woke ideology and the trans ideology and all that stuff. If you want to identify as an igloo, be my guest. Just don't tell me I have to say Mr. Igloo, you know.
And leave the kids alone.
But the thing is that because of that outrage among so many people at the extreme nature of the woke, and that was all planned, I'm sure of that. These people were able to come in being anti-woke. And once they started to, I mean, talking about the Weinsteins in America and many others who came in from that direction, and suddenly they start pontificating about the wider conspiracy, and what they've said about it is complete and utter nonsense. And it's created a myopic view of what the conspiracy is. So suddenly the deep state is the Democrats, right? Because, they just want the woke and authoritarian. And then the right comes in, and it's as authoritarian as anything the left ever did. But it's, as you say, it's okay when we do it. And so this pendulum is constantly being moved, and it's not organic. You're right. No, it's being done to create a reaction. Because in the end, the foundation of the entire conspiracy, all of it, is based on controlling human perception, therefore controlling human behavior, which comes from perception. And it's amazing to me how easy it is to control perception. Extraordinary.
I think that pendulum swing is a really good analogy for it, because it's not the swing, it's the extraordinary way in which it swings in terms of all the way that way. They need to have it swing. That's the word I'm looking for.
I think
they need that extreme. If without it, and they know, they're telling you, the alchemical principle is red means positive, blue is negative. They'll tell you that you've got a choice between either polarity, and you've got to swing between the lot. Obviously, the middle part is you're all full of shit anyway. But the point is that they want to swing like that.
We spoke about this before.
Go on.
Our opinions probably haven't changed that much over the last decade, but the
Overton window's been
changed
booted
so
down
much.
the street.
When it comes to like the key morals of life, I think the same as I thought 10 years ago.
Oh, same.
A bit more experience, a bit more knowledge, but you think the same about this being wrong, that being right.
Yeah, I was a southern softy liberal whose nickname when I played hockey as a youngster, as a teenager, was Swampy, the eco warrior. And my opinions are the same then as they are now, and now I get called far right sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. But what I was saying, what you mentioned there, Rich, is you've got this pendulum, right? Now that is for public consumption. That's on the level of politics and the world of the five senses, if you like. But the pendulum's being orchestrated here.
Absolutely.
And as long as you can be manipulated to focus on a savior or a villain in Trump, or a savior or a villain in someone else, they got you.
100%.
They got you.
Yeah, I think for me, like if I look at people, which I don't know how many are nowadays, given how much information is out there. I mean, I'm sure the internet was created for nefarious means, absolutely, but it's backfired in some elements, I think, in terms of getting information out there. Israel alone being a prime example of that. The mainstream media won't show you stuff that you're seeing every day in your feed, and it gets to a point where suddenly the media has to, oh, okay, we've got to show it then, because otherwise we're being too obvious.
Yeah, too obvious. Yeah.
So there's people out there that, you know, maybe don't see it and they're being manipulated and they don't get it. But there's others, and I've seen this over the last couple of days, that they know they are. And it's almost like an active decision. So I put a clip out from our trending episode yesterday where I was making that very point about the fact that you're going to have people on the right that were cancelled over COVID and whatever, perceived right, that were cancelled over COVID, and the left cheered that on, to generalise, but a lot of them did cheered that on. And now suddenly those on the left are being cancelled for their speaking up for Palestine, and the right wing is cheering it on. Mm-hmm. And instead of going, well, no one should be cancelled, it's saying, ha, it happened to you too, without realising that the pendulum comes back again in the future.
Oh, it will.
And now, so that was shared around, and it got some decent comments, some having a go, but that's fine, whatever. Anyway, one guy commented, and I saw it this morning, and he said, I agree with you, but the left has been so petty over the years in terms of cancelling people and having them banned and silenced and whatever. Why shouldn't we be petty for once? And you're like, now, if you've been cancelled and cheered on by the other side, I can understand that. But it's the whole...
Two wrongs don't make a right.
Well, no, it's also like, you know, it makes the whole world blind in the end. So actually, whilst I can understand an element of, oh, God, it would be nice for you to get some, but I'm going to rise above that. And actually, no, I don't support you being cancelled.
Well, I mean, I've been cancelled on a mega industrial scale over the years. And I have no desire whatsoever for anyone to be cancelled from having their right to an opinion, even when I disagree with it.
To be fair, you were cancelled before being cancelled was a thing.
Yeah.
But Ricky Gervais said it perfectly in his last stand-up, where he said, by cancelling somebody today or campaigning for someone to be cancelled today, all you're ensuring is you'll be cancelled at some point in the future.
Of course. Yeah,
because the evolution of the times, nobody knows what is going to be considered acceptable in the future. And by cancelling people for their opinions, that's just disgraceful.
I've seen people trying to cancel Roald Dahl for stuff that he was writing in books going back 60 years.
I'll tell you what's interesting. I've been watching a lot of videos in the last few weeks on YouTube by the left. And it's extraordinary to watch because they are criticizing the right for all that they did themselves. But because the right is now in power in America, or what's called the right anyway, they now suddenly become supporters of free speech and lack of censorship.
Yeah.
When they had the control of power, they pushed both. Yeah. And this whole thing about it's okay when we do it is a classic. And you know, it's like you just said about the guy with the comment about, well, it would be nice if we could be a bit petty for it. Well, look at what you're saying. It's childish. If this is the point. If you stand for something and you believe in it and it's immovable, then you don't move the goalposts because suddenly you have power. Whether you have power or whether you don't, what you believe to be right is immovable.
Immovable is
immovable.
Right. Yeah.
It has to be. Otherwise, you become exactly what you rail against.
Yeah.
And this is what we're seeing. You know, this left and right doesn't realize that they are mirrors of each other. And the only difference between it's, censorship bad, free speech good, or not, is whether they're in power at the time or not.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I see these left-wing videos saying, "Oh, well, under Biden it was this and it was that." Well, under Biden it was chaos.
Yeah.
Under Biden, you had the woke authoritarianism, but it's okay when we do it.
Yeah, it's pathetic, really. Freedom of speech.
They don't understand as well that if one side, if you split it down the middle, and you've got two sides, if one of them is winning, then by definition the other one is losing. And so in that case, then you're going to have half of the population, for sake of argument, which is disillusioned, disenfranchised, angry. So what a society to live in.
Well, this is just a very quick point. We were talking earlier about Starmer's government. What's been forgotten when they talk about he's got this massive majority is he got about a third of the vote and less vote share than actually Corbyn did when he lost. And if you have any moral fibre and backbone at all, when you're the Labour government coming in, you look at that and you say, well, hold on a minute, 2/3 of the country voted against us. So we can't just come in and impose our will on everybody because 2/3 of the people didn't want it. But they don't. They come in, and because of this ludicrous electoral system that we have, the first past the post, it means that a third of the vote gives you, in this case, total power. And you push through your as much as you can get away with. Yeah. And you know, that says so much about the mob, and they are a mob that's in power in this country in the Labour Party from Starmer downwards.
Well, it's a business deal really is what a political election is, in the sense of it's what each side does for each other, and you want both sides to be happy. And if you're going into business with somebody and you reach an agreement with them where you get everything you want and they get nothing you want, well, you're not going to do a second deal with them because no one's happy. You're never going to really reach that point, especially when you have people across the country who think differently, who care about different things and have different philosophies and perspectives on things. But you could reach a point quite happily where everyone is, don't quite like that, but I love that. Don't quite like that, but that's okay. And you're all content. You're all at a point where everyone's rights to live their lives the way they want to live them, whether you're religious, whether you're gay, straight, whatever your persuasion is, you're protected. You have the right to live that way, but you don't have the right to impose that on anybody else. And the law protects that. That would be the bedrock of any society where you would have any kind of harmony. Yeah. But when you have any, like you just said there, when you have any situation where one side is winning, one side is losing, you could apply it to a marriage. If you've got one where, you know, one dominates and the other's belittled and feeble, then that's not a happy marriage. It's the same on a country level. And just a final point on freedom of speech, the reason it's so important for so many issues is if you're a prat, you can expose yourself for being a prat. If you don't have freedom of speech, you can't. And for me, I want to live in a world where you can see the prats and you can call them out, rather than the other way around.
Yeah, I want Randy Fine to be able to open his mouth publicly on a regular basis.
So the moral of that story is straight down the middle.
Straight down the middle.
Don't be a swinger.
Don't be a swinger, exactly.
Basically.
Well, we're going to dive into some members' questions. If you're watching with us on Twitter, then thank you for joining us. And we're going to take some questions from lifetime members and members of Ickonic. So if you want to watch the rest of that, head over to ickonic.com to watch. Right, there's a good variation of questions here. So we're going to start with lifetime members. Worth mentioning quickly, thank you to all of you for your support and joining the channel on a lifetime basis. We hope you like the content that you're putting out. We're going to do some of these on a regular basis annually that will go out just to you guys. But for the next half an hour or so, we're just going to take questions from you. So first question, this is quite interesting, especially with what's going on at the moment. This is a question from Gail. If we have to be scared of nuclear war, why aren't we just as scared of countries bombing nuclear facilities? Fair point. What happens if a bomb blasts a nuclear reactor, or is it all for show and what they're distracting us from? Which brings us to the whole topic of, do nuclear weapons exist? Because that's been
it's a rabbit hole.
It's been something that, yeah, like you say, it's a rabbit hole, but it's been something that there's a lot of very strong opinions on both sides of. The obvious answer would be yes, they do, and the reason that Nagasaki and Hiroshima was allowed to happen at the end of the Second World War was to give a visual representation of what nuclear war would look like. And for context, the nuclear bombs dropped there are essentially that, compared to the ones that exist in current climate. So it creates that fear of that, and obviously what followed with the Cold War and the constant fear of that. And nuclear conflict and nuclear arms has been a justification for the wars in Iraq, weapons of mass destruction, for the conflict in North Korea, the constant rhetoric about North Korea, and now this kick-off in Iran. We can't let Iran have a nuclear weapon, we can't let Saddam Hussein have a nuclear weapon. They were all used as pretexts for these wars. And is it all a fabrication? Do they even exist?
I don't know, but I'm at the point now where I'm open to absolutely anything. And the idea that they maybe aren't what we're told they are.
Yeah, I remember a long time ago, I think it was a New Zealand aircraft pilot who did a lot of work and put out a lot of information about the fact that nuclear weapons only went off in certain circumstances. I can't remember exactly what those circumstances were. I think it had something to do with the sun or whatever. And he produced these graphs of all the nuclear explosions that we know of that fitted what he said has to happen for these to go off. So obviously I don't know if that's true. And I don't know if they exist or not, because Nagasaki and Hiroshima looked pretty devastating, to be honest. And but how does anyone know unless one drops? I guess.
Well, Gail's question is about, I suppose, is the attacks on the Iranian nuclear facilities. If there's nuclear material down there, surely that's going to lead to a leak of radiation and potential dangers, like a Chernobyl type situation.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's not even been talked about.
Or a Fukushima,
But that's not even been. No. I've not seen a single news story that's talked about the potential for that.
I can tell you when you would see a news story about that, and that would be if Iran attacked Israel's nuclear facility.
That they don't have.
Then you would see round the clock news stories about how they'd put the world at risk by attacking it.
But it's a very interesting thing, and I think you tweeted the other week, didn't you, when the conflict started, that of all the tinfoil hat conspiracies, the one I'm praying for now is that nukes are fake.
Yeah, I hope they are fake.
Well, one of the research I've been doing fairly recently is to do with Jack Parsons and the stuff that he was working on. He was a acolyte of Aleister Crowley, and they were trying to do it along with L. Ron Hubbard. They were trying to do something called the Babylon working ritual, which was about opening up a vortex to bring in this being from another world into a body and house that being, Antichrist, in a body, which is Rosemary's Baby, which is the Moonchild. Same thing. Aleister Crowley wrote the Moonchild. So Jack Parsons was very much involved with the Babylon working. They tried to do it. But he was also very involved with rocket technology and nuclear technology. And then you look at Klaus Schwab. He ran a company, a factory I can never pronounce what it is, but it was in Germany, so that was not bombed on purpose. And that produced nuclear technology. When you go to Columbia University, they had a particle accelerator hidden underneath there that was used in the Manhattan Project. So there was rumours that at the Trinity site, which is the Manhattan Project in New Mexico, that they had a fetus of, and I'm not saying this is true, but there's a lot of people out there that believe this, a fetus of an fully born baby of Jack Parsons and his wife, who he believed was the vessel for this being, in this big 12-foot container, and they were trying to bring this being in by blasting a hole in the veil. As mad as that sounds, these are sacrificial technological versions of a ritual from a satanic ritual. It's no different. They're just using technology. So I think the technology, I'm not saying that is necessarily true, although I think there is something to do that, especially in New Mexico, Zorro Ranch there, Trementina's site, which is the Church of Spiritual Technology, Dulce Base, Roswell. Lots going on there underneath the ground, I think. But what I would say is I think that technology is being used to try to peer into or open up vortexes into other places, and not just necessarily for nuclear bombs. I'm not saying they don't exist. I don't think that's the sole purpose of that technology.
I think the thing that needs to be grasped, I think, is that whatever technology you see in the public arena, whatever technology they admit to, in the underground bases and the secret projects and away from the public eye, they are light years ahead of anything we see in the public
100%.
arena.
Well, Los Alamos is right up the road from Zorro Ranch and all of these places, and they've all been rumoured to have other types of beings and things going on underneath, haven't they?
Yeah, well, I went to Los Alamos once and just drove around it, which you could on the surface, and you know, most of Los Alamos is underneath the ground.
There's a lot of them. Pine Gap in Australia is another one.
Yeah, I mean, there's a place in America in the Mojave Desert called China Lake Naval Weapons Station, and I've met a number of people who have told me independently of each other the underground nature of the China Lake, and that there are reptilian entities under there which they have seen. And it's a big mind control center as well. There's lots of mind control people there. And Joseph Mengele, who sort of escaped from Nazi Germany and went to South America and operated in the United States as Dr. Green.
Yep.
He was a regular visitor, I'm told by a number of people, to China Lake Naval Weapons Center, and I've driven around it twice, around the perimeter, and there's basically nothing above ground. Everything is underneath the ground, and that's where this technology, not necessarily China Lake, but these underground facilities which go down phenomenal distances, they are where this cutting edge technology exists, and it's being passed over by these non-human entities that are massively ahead technologically. And what they're doing is they're bringing this technology out of the underground bases. They're getting front people to be the cover story for how it came into the public arena. And this is where this massive AI control system is actually coming from, and so we look at nuclear weapons, but that's not even the cutting edge anymore. Directed energy weapons are the
well, we saw that on 9/11. That was 24 years ago.
Directed energy weapons are ahead of that, where you just make something literally disintegrate by breaking up its material structure. Vaporize it, basically.
It's worth noting as well, in terms of, you mentioned the Manhattan Project, about the fact that there is no borders with this, because the Manhattan Project was started in the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
It started at a place called Remymullen, which is in Wales. And we managed to blag access to that site. And we got in and we did a little bit of filming. It's all above surface, derelict now. And you still have to, go straight for a shower afterwards because of the radiation, all this kind of stuff. But we got ourselves in there and, did some filming, like I say. But there's a lot of tunnels there.
Oh, there would be.
And that was the area that we were not allowed access to.
Well, yeah.
And that was decommissioned in the 1960s. But even now, the security is
high.
Well, you can't get in the tunnels. You've got no
there's
chance.
a reason for that, obviously.
Yeah. One of the other things I'm looking at later that pertains to what you were saying about this technology coming from elsewhere is a thing called Rocco's Basilisk, which is basically, it's a story, it's a thought experiment, and Elon Musk knows about this because this is how he met Grimes, and they ended up getting married and having a kid, I think, or 3 children. And this is the fact that a thought experiment, that if you know that AI can be built into a godhead, if you don't contribute into making it, it will kill off your offspring in the future. Now, I wonder if, I'm not saying that's true, by the way, I'm saying that the likes of Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, Zuckerberg believe this to be true. That's why they talk out against some of the dangers of it, but also whilst contributing at the same time. Because if they believe this technology is coming to them or through the underground bases, I mean, they're trapped in this understanding. It's this double bind they're in, because that's the only reason, like we spoke about, why would they keep contributing and say it's dangerous? Well, they know about this thought experiment, And basilisk is a snake that if you stare into it, it freezes you and you become petrified.
Yeah, I'm thinking of Harry Potter with the basilisk.
It's the same. Yeah, that's where they got it from. Well, no, that's where Harry Potter got it from.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of symbolism in those.
So that is, I believe, the only reason I've come up with that they know that this technology, they believe in anyway. And I don't think it really matters whether it's true or not. You know, they're the ones in the position to cause a lot of trouble. Why you see them terrified?
Yeah, well, you look at your Peter Thiels, and okay, within the human hierarchy, he's quite high within the AI hierarchy, but he's a total gopher. He's Thiel and the other guys that started Palantir, and Musk and all these people, Mark Andreessen, Altman. And others, the Oracle guy as well. They're just gophers. They are these people who are the cover story people that's putting this into the public arena. So if you look at what OpenAI are doing with Sam Altman, they're bringing in this chat GBT, more and more advanced levels of it. And it's being promoted as if, oh yeah, we've gone away and we've discovered more, It's just being played out. It's coming out of the underground bases. And things that, you see these in sci-fi films way back. You see technology being portrayed in these sci-fi films that eventually becomes commonplace. Because they're basically telling you what they already have, and so when you look at the cutting edge of AI currently, it's not the real cutting edge of AI. The real cutting edge is waiting to come in.
We'll be decades and decades ahead in the underground base of where they are today. Right, thank you, Gail, for your question. Hopefully we've answered that and answered about 5 more as well alongside that. Kevin, this is a question. This kind of ties into some of the subjects we spoke about, actually, Gaz, so do you want to take this one? Do any of you feel there's a chance that the woke culture will actually figure out that it's encouraging insanity? Because ultimately it seems that woke want good for everybody. Do you think it's unconsciously submerged itself in a contradictory eddy and it will discover that at some point?
I think there's a certain amount of that. I also think when it comes to that particular side, if you've got 100 people, say I'm in control of everything, I've got 100 people, now I'm in control of what everyone else sees of that 100 people. Now if 2 of them are maniacs and I decide to elevate those maniacs, whether it be algorithmically or whether it be they're the ones that you put as the face, they're the ones you put on Question Time, they're the ones you put in the studio with Tucker Carlson or whatever, you create this illusion that everyone within that space is exactly like those 2 maniacs. So you elevate the extremes and you do the same the other side as well. So you have this perception of everyone on the left is like this, and everyone on the left believes there's 250 genders and they all use pronouns and they're X, Y, Z. It's not the case. It's not the case at all. You just elevate that and you put it up there for everyone to howl at like the moon. I think there's a lot of people within the left that are starting to see through things and are starting to realise that actually I've been played here a little bit.
Yep.
So yes, in short, I'd say
I think that's true. But we come back to this human need to be part of a group. Maybe it goes back to tribal DNA, I don't know, but to be part of a group. Because, the word maverick comes from some guy in the Midwest, I think, who wouldn't brand his cattle. His name was Maverick, so that's where it came from. He's a maverick. And, Ickonic is peopled by mavericks. And they are people that say what they believe to be right because they believe it to be right, not because they want to impress a group, to be part of that group. But if you're not in control of your own sense of self-security, you look outside of yourself for that security. And that's when you look into the group. And if you want to be part of a group, then you ain't going to last long if you don't say what the group wants to hear. So, once the woke thing came in, to be part of the group in the universities, the colleges, etc., you had to start speaking the language of woke. And, as I've said over the years, you can be told that 2 and 2 equals 5. And at the start, it equals 5. It really should be 4. You know that. You're aware of it. But you go along with the fact that 2 and 2 equals 5 because that makes you part of the group, because the group wants to hear that. But the process goes on to the point where eventually you start believing that 2 and 2 equals 5. You start believing it. It's not, well, I'll just say this to be part of the group. It becomes you. And I think that the woke mentality has been a massive form of collective mind control, just as the right, the MAGA right, is another form of collective mind control. And the antidote to it is literally, to be what we call mavericks. Actually, for me, it's just being, just common sense, is that you'll judge something on whether you believe it's right or makes sense or not. So there are some things that a woker will say, and you'll say, yeah, I agree with that. And then they'll say something else, and you go, for me, that's total nonsense, mate. And the same with the right, and the same with anyone else. Because you become a sovereign being where your perceptions are what you decide they are, rather than you fusing with a group and the group deciding what your perceptions are. That's the whole basis, of course, is of a cult. I'm just reading a book at the moment. I just finished the book, actually, by a guy who was in the Mooney cult and believed it all. They believed that this moon guy was a god, and then they got deprogrammed from it, literally. And he became a psychologist. And there's lots of things he says I don't agree with, actually. But in terms of what he says about cults, he became a psychologist specializing, I think since 1976, on helping people get out of cults. And getting out of cults is getting out of the belief system of the predominant cult leader, getting out of that programming and starting to think for yourself. And when I look at woke, again, the left, and I look at MAGA, the right, they're both cults. And they're both cults because the people in them are having their perceptions dictated by the cult leaders, instead of deciding them for themselves. And this is true sovereignty. It's when you have an opinion that can agree with someone and disagree with them in 2 sentences. Oh yeah, I agree with that. Oh no, I'm not having that. I don't agree with that. That's sovereignty. But when you agree with someone and you parrot what they say because you want to be part of a group, that's a cult.
And I think what's also really key is that the woke mentality, which is probably feeling disenfranchised about the world, not like the direction of travel, seeing a lot of the problems, we're all pretty similar in that respect, as are a lot of people that are in this conspiracy movement. We just disagree on what the symptoms and therefore what the cause and what the solution may be. But in terms of viewing the world and the direction it's going in as not a positive one, there's a lot of common ground there. And I think if people start doing exactly what you say, which is look and go, yeah, okay, I agree with that. Don't agree with that. I agree with that, rather than coming at it from a perspective of, well, you're far right because you don't believe in this. Yeah. It's absolutely pathetic, that kind of group thing.
Yeah, we need some grown-ups in the room to throw it back to the guys saying, why can't we be petty sometimes? Well, to break the circuit, at some point,
someone has to break.
Someone needs to grow up.
So, the adults have to enter the room.
Yeah,
I've had people, particularly in America, say to me, I can't look at anything you say because you don't believe in Jesus, and it's like, so all possibility of what I say, what I write is dismissed on the basis of someone's belief system. And that's childlike. Well, I'm insulting children. It's the mentality of the playground.
Where does it cult if that's your attitude?
I just add this below thing I really want to add to it is that what I kind of learned, especially doing this sort of work, was that I'm not my opinions and not my beliefs. So my beliefs can change quite extraordinarily. If I find a bit of information and it contradicts one, I think, oh, that makes a bit more sense. Doesn't make me an idiot. Doesn't make me a bad person.
No, you're allowed to evolve.
I'm allowed to change my views, and I'm not my views or my opinions or my beliefs at that moment. I'm someone who's trying to figure it all out and sitting back from it. And I think that's really important when people are, say, woke or all to the right. You can change your mind. Don't make you a bad person. It makes you. The more you try and hold on to something you no longer believe, the more damage you're going to do to your own psychology.
100%.
So just drop it, because you're not. Do you treat people well? Are you a decent person? Do you try? You do the basics right. The rest of it is just stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important.
Well, you never used to like Sam Smith in a leotard.
Bloody
Look at
love
you
him.
now, mate.
Love him. You showed me it.
I wrote an article on this today, which is about, it was aimed at the MAGA cult really, but it was about kind of doubling down on a loser rather than admitting you were wrong. And you can apply that to so many areas of people's lives where they do that. And all you're doing by that is prolonging your suffering. Because when you accept you've been wrong, or you accept that you've got something, you've called something wrong, you can then start to solve the problem, whatever that problem may be. But the longer that you refuse to admit that, whether that's staying in a toxic marriage, whether that's putting crap in your body, in your ear when you feel rubbish, whatever it is, the longer that you ignore the problem because you don't want to go, actually, I called that one wrong, because you think that's weak, you're just prolonging your suffering. So that's not a sign
You've got to learn to laugh at yourself.
Oh, you do.
You need to
You
learn
do.
that.
It's hilarious.
Just be nice to people. The rest of it is all dressing.
Hashtag be kind.
Hashtag be kind.
Thank you very much for your question, Kevin. We're going to come on. We've got another question. This is aimed at you, mate, actually.
Oh, dear.
This is from Satu Vikman.
Oh, I remember Satu.
I've heard
It's a great name, though, isn't it?
I've heard David, Gareth and Jamie talk about their awakening processes and how they work, but I've not heard Richard's. I'm very intrigued to hear it.
I didn't have a sudden one. It was a process over time. I never believed the narrative. Like, I never liked being told what to do. I always thought things were really funny and weird anyway, possibly because I was ill as a kid, so I spent a lot of time indoors, couldn't go to school, in hospitals, watching the world go by. It always seemed like a madhouse to me and quite funny. Maybe it's a coping mechanism, but it probably is a coping mechanism.
I think you're an 80s kid as well, which
An
plays
80s
into that.
kid really helps, because we got the same sense of humour, and we lived miles apart and didn't meet until we were in our late 30s. So it's part of that, but it was never an awakening. It was almost like, this place is mad, and then it just got more and more confirmed as I got older, and now I just find it really funny. There was never an awakening moment. It was just, this place is mental.
Laughing at the madness is really, really important.
It really is. It really is, because everybody just wants the same thing. They just want a peaceful time. They want to, it depends what you believe here, but most people just want to just get on.
They do.
And
they do.
it's like such a waste of energy in the world of just bollocks.
Yeah.
And it's like, as you get older, you get so tired. I'm only 44, but I feel like
You've been tired since
78,
you were 10.
But I've been tired for a long time.
That's
it. I didn't wake
in
up.
terms of awakening, I think it's important for us to recognise that awakening is what's happening. And when people say I'm awake, it's like, you're not.
No, you're not.
None of us are. We're awakening.
It's not a journey that's ever finished, really.
That's why it's important to drop things if you don't believe.
Of course, it's not ever finished, because of this very circumstances we find ourselves in, and it's like always realizing that whatever we think we know, there's always more to know. What I've seen in the so-called alternative media are people who've hijacked that central core, who've kind of awoken. I mean, it's like you're in a prison cell, and then it's slightly moved, so it's slightly bigger. Oh, I could see there's a conspiracy, but it's the Democrats. And you stop. I got it now. Whenever you say I've got it all, you haven't.
That's the prison cell you just said. The analogy is great, because that's the prison cell you've created for yourself.
Yeah.
It's your own.
It's a prison cell created by the illusion and delusion that you know all you need to know. And that means that you stop going down the rabbit hole to uncover more and more, and the depth and scale of it, and the answers to it, because, well, I got it now.
Yeah.
I'm in a slightly bigger prison cell, and that's good enough for me. Well, it's not.
I think that's sad. I think the concept that there's so much about the world, yourself, reality that you don't know right now is exciting, because what you're going to know in the future. Right, we're going to do one more lifetime member. So thank you very much for your question there, Satu. We got a very deep question though. I'm not sure how much me and you, Gaz, are going to contribute to this one, but this is a really interesting question to finish on before we take general questions. So Patrick Perler asks, do you believe there is a united front of the elites, deep state / non-human entities, all moving in the same direction, or do you believe there's competing factions with their own different and nuanced agendas, i.e. Shabads, Satanists, transhumanists?
Great question.
Well, I can go for that.
What about the white hats? Where are they?
Where are they? Should we leave the room? We just leave. We just leave the camera. Or just leave this camera. We'll see you in an hour.
Yes to all of the above, basically. The way I've kind of seen it over the years is, cool, gee, I'm starting to
Guys,
I actually think it's cooler now than when we started though.
I suppose, but yeah, it is a bit, but I'm still sweating a bit. You've got this pyramid, this control pyramid, if you like. And down here, you've got people compete, because of the mentality involved, they all want to be up the greasy pole, and they're competing. But you've got a force here at the top of the pyramid that once that gets out of hand and starts to affect because in the end, that inner core, the top of the pyramid, they're the only people that know the real picture, the big picture of why everything's happening. And the further you come down the pyramid, even within the cult, secret society networks, you're meeting people who know less and less and less about the big picture, until you get down the bottom here to the Freemasons in the local lodge, who are just doing it to get a good deal with the local planning to build some bloody estate or something. Yeah. But at the top there, they know the score, they know where they're going and why. And so the further you come down, you have the conflicts between different factions, because they want to be in control and whatever. But the point is that once that starts impacting upon the direction of travel, then they'll start knocking heads together, and people will get not taken out literally, although sometimes, but they'll be taken out of the game, or they'll be told in no uncertain terms, you stop doing this, otherwise, there's got to be consequences. And these people, especially the higher you go up, they know how ruthless the top of and brutal the top of the pyramid is. And so they know they're not kidding. So the answer, I would say, to the question is, yeah, there's lots of conflict within the cult as people try to get higher up the greasy pole than someone else. But there's a force at the top who will be okay with that to an extent, because conflict's a good thing, and it gives the illusion of real choice to the population if they see it. But if it gets in the way of the direction, no, not having it. And so yes and no.
You looked at me each time Dad said greasy pole.
I did.
To see if I was smirking, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
I thought that.
What's?
I did.
Okay.
I noticed that.
Okay, this is a generational thing.
You didn't even smoke.
I didn't break a smoke.
No, this is a generational thing.
I did.
Go on,
So-
you two.
I didn't mention it.
Why would a greasy pole be funny?
For me,
You got to explain now.
greasy pole was
Yeah.
an analogy for trying to get up a pole that was very difficult to get up. What is it to you guys?
not
Well,
Polish
it's either a sweaty Polish person or a penis.
Yeah. But I didn't say it. I just looked at you.
But both times I saw you
just
look at
looked
me and
at
I
you,
thought,
yeah.
I know what he's thinking.
Yeah. So I didn't say it. I did. Yeah. There you
Right.
go.
Well, you
See,
have
life
now.
is an adventure.
There you go,
Well, I
it is.
didn't. You outed me.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your
I
question.
didn't even answer that one.
Well, we've got loads. We're going to get through as many as we can, so we're going to go through as many as we can in the time we've got left. So we're going to move on. I think this is one that's definitely an interesting one for you, Richard. And Dan, I'm sure you'll have something to contribute. I'll keep stitching me and you up, mate. This is from Jules in Dallas, Texas. Hello. We know the Anunnaki, Archons, or whatever name you want to give to them, use low vibrational energy as food and fuel. So with that in mind, why is there a depopulation agenda?
I read this question before we started. It's
Surely
such a
that
good
would be
question.
counterproductive for
Because
them.
it's a question I've had.
It's a really interesting question.
And, you know, you'd be far more applicable to answer this than I would, because something I've asked, why is there a depopulation agenda? And I haven't come to an answer yet. So,
Well,
it's a good
the
question.
means of it. So if you're depopulating through death and disease and war, then that's pretty good in terms of a low vibrational energy.
Yep, fear, of course.
I guess less people are easier to control, isn't it?
Yeah, I think
So quality over quantity.
if you look back at sort of common themes from what we call the distant past, and the Great Flood to erase humanity, and, I think that was symbolic of real events. The Great Flood in the Old Testament about Noah is just a steal from Sumeria and the Sumerian tablets and the Epic of Gilgamesh, etc. Gilgamesh, rather. And so I think when you reach a point of losing control, you want to sort of sift the population a little bit as part of the control. But I think there's another element to it, and that is that what they have to do at the moment is manipulate the population into low vibrational emotional mental states, fear, hatred, anxiety, regret, resentment, all these things. And they have to do that by manipulating events and the drama of the world. But what they want, and this is the real bottom line they've been aiming for all along, is they want to connect artificial intelligence to the human brain and the human body, so that we get our emotions and mental states direct. They're not coming from us anymore. And so what you basically turn humans into are, to use the word of Robert Monroe, the astral traveler, famously, is you have loosh, this low vibrational energy, on tap. Because you can generate emotional and mental states at will. Because it's like Kurzweil said, Ray Kurzweil, the Google executive, that by 2030, the fusion will begin to happen. And from that moment, human thinking will do less. And AI will do more and more until human thinking is basically negligible. And what that does is turn humans into basically a terminal, a computer terminal on the internet, which can be made to think and emotionally react any way the AI decides. So I think that way it's a far more efficient system of generating this low vibrational energy. But it's an interesting question, yeah. And I'm not sure that necessarily the depopulation agenda is as massive as is being portrayed. I think it exists. No problem with that. Don't think it's as massive.
So it's a really interesting question. So what you're kind of saying there is that so say it's an alchemical process, they're using the human body to process be information coming in which will kick out the output of loosh that they want. So they need a certain amount of humans to kind of process that because they can't get it on their own. So that makes sense.
See, it leads me to another question. I asked someone this the other day, which is, because there was a lot of talk, wasn't there, of the vaccine being part of the COVID vaccine being part of the depopulation agenda. It was going to wipe out a lot of people, which it did, and it was going to cause a lot of people to have health issues, which would lead to a much shorter life over the following years. But then I asked the question, and I can't really answer it. Surely then the people that are left are the people that are going to be resistant to your control system because they didn't take your vaccine, so they know they don't trust you. And that's what you're left with if you did that. So why would you do that?
It's a fair point.
It's like, you know...
I think everything has a negative and a positive effect.
It's like trying to start a fight with somebody and taking out all the weak ones and leaving the tough ones that will fight you back. To me, that just, on the surface level, obviously these people, as we've talked about, operate 10 levels beyond what you see in the 5 cents obvious, but just as an obvious sort of, that doesn't make any sense, does it?
No, but the game is a long one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I think that's the point. It's a long game, and what they've done with the COVID vaccine, fake vaccine, is target those who either through choice or intimidation or fear of the consequences would accept it.
Yeah.
But we don't know where it's going from here in terms of the forcible nature of these fake vaccines in the future.
Yeah, of course.
And also, let's not lose sight of the fact that this self-replicating nanotechnology is being infused into people through many and various ways. Chemtrails are one of them. I mean, this graphene, which is very, very destructive to humans. Once you get into the brain and what have you, it's an electrical rewirer. It's been found in chemtrails, according to whistleblowers. They put graphene in chemtrails. This nanotechnology is in food.
Yeah, there is.
Who knows what's in the bloody water? So, but in the end, this is the whole point. Is consciousness is far more powerful than any technology, but it's consciousness in its pomp, not consciousness that's fast asleep. And the awakening is about remembering the power that we have to create our own reality. I mean, one of the interesting things that I've been really looking in detail at from a quantum physics point of view is the emerging evidence to support the fact that we create our own reality. That our perceptions of reality interact with the quantum realm. They change, the quantum realm is basically potentiality. And our perceptions interact with that frequency of our perceptions, interact with that potentiality and manifest a reflection of our perceptions, both conscious and subconscious. 95% of human behavior comes from the subconscious. It manifests our reality. So if you are someone who believes that they have no power, then that will manifest a life for you that is powerless, not because you are, but because you perceive that you are. And I know that these elites go through training to and practice and teaching on how to create your reality through your perception of reality, because they know how it works. This is why they want to keep it from us. So what that means is that if they want to create a certain world, then what you do is you program the population to believe in that world. And this is a lot of what preemptive programming is about. You're putting in there, this is what's coming, this is how it's going to be. This is why I always say, when I'm saying that this is the plan, it doesn't have to happen.
Yeah.
But what they're doing is collectively, if they can collectively get people to have perceptions of both subconscious massively and conscious, perceptions of how the world is going to be or how the world is, then that collective interaction with the quantum level will manifest that world. They know that if they can get the perceptions of the population, they will get a world that reflects that, which is the world that they want. And so if you look, for instance, at religion, what is it about? Virtually all religions, not necessarily every last one, but what is it about? It's about having the perception of being subordinate to another force, believing that your God is up there and you're down here, and you have to follow the diktats of your God, otherwise there are consequences. Well, okay, so 5.4 billion of the 8 billion identify as either Christian, Muslim, or Hindu, never mind all the other religions. So you've got this sense of subordination. Now look at the world.
Yeah,
what is it? It's a world of subordination. The perceptions of reality become experienced reality. And therefore, if we can take back control of our perceptions and our sense of reality and our sense of our own power, then we can mitigate a lot of the effects that are coming in our individual lives. But collectively, more important, we can bring this lot down when we stop believing in it. So what you've got now is this barrage of programming about artificial intelligence. It's being bombarded. We're being bombarded with it. And now you've got this, oh yeah, we've got to beat China. We can't fall behind China with AI. Oh no, and now it's a race. Now it's a sporting event. And if you believe, well, as I say, what you believe, what you perceive, you believe, what you believe, you experience. This AI takeover is being brought in overwhelmingly by persuading the population that AI is going to take over.
And that it's inevitable and resistance.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. That's the point I've made about Elon Musk. This word inevitable is key to what I've just been talking about, because when you're trying to stop something, you're trying to stop it. Once you accept that what you're trying to stop is inevitable, the whole dynamic changes. Now you are trying to mitigate the effects. You're not trying to stop it anymore. Yeah. And so you've got Elon Musk, who has gone from, oh, I'm an AI skeptic, I am, of course you are, to, oh, but it's inevitable that AI is going to become more intelligent than humans. So the only way that we're going to not die out is if we fuse with humans, which is what Klaus Schwab's saying on the other side. And it's and then you think about this on that basis, that once they control your thoughts and emotions, well, they can create any reality they want, because you're not in the game anymore. And they can get you to interact with the quantum realm to manifest anything they want. This is the level it's going on at, and it's light years away from Trump or Harris or Biden.
And with this subject in mind, this next question follows on from it, which I'll ask from Jennifer. With she used the example of Ray-Ban glasses. Said with Ray-Ban glasses now having Meta AI technology within them and facial recognition applications, what do you do to try and maintain your privacy? And I think I'll open it up in a sec, but I think a key one is only using technology that is essential. Like so much of the technology people use daily now is really not needed. It's lazy. You know, Alexa, put this song on. Like, just go and put it on. You know, the technology is not inherently bad.
Grok, is this true?
Yeah, technology is not inherently bad or inherently good. It's how you use it. You know, we're using this technology to speak to people across the world. Other people are using technology to bomb civilians. It's not inherently good or it's inherently bad. It's how you use it, and it's the outcome that is desired by using it. And I think we've been encouraged so much now to use technology to the point that all those things Dad's talking about, there will be a demographic of people that think, sounds great, stick a chip in my brain, don't have to think for myself. There will be a demographic of people that think that, particularly younger generations who have been introduced to technology at such a young age. Like, I was on holiday a couple of weeks ago in Mallorca, and the amount of kids on iPads that are less than 5 years old, and I'm looking around going, what are you doing? Like, we were almost like the anomaly, along with like 2 or 3 other families of 20, with the only two or three that are not having their kids on technology. And I think for me, the answer to that question is quite simple, is if you allow the relationship with your technology to become where it's your master rather than your servant, the dynamic is the wrong way around. If you're using your phone or you're using the technology to better your life and to do things that you can't do, fine. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. There's ways you can mitigate the damages and dangers of it, which we've discussed, like EMF technology. You don't need your phone in your pocket, you don't need your Wi-Fi on at night, you don't need Wi-Fi at all, hardware your house, all those things. But if you're using it every single second of the day, if you're doom scrolling the second you wake up in the morning, if you're sat scrolling before you get into bed, if you're sat on your phone while your kids are playing, you're not interacting with them, you can't go more than 30 seconds without picking it up, that's when you've got a problem. And one of the key ways, I think, firstly, don't buy Ray-Ban glasses, really simple.
No, I think she's making the point of how do you keep your privacy if other people are wearing Ray-Ban glasses. I think I took that as the question.
Yeah, well, that's obviously another question.
Wear a burqa.
It's more difficult. It's much more difficult, but you can be in control of what you're in control of, which is how much of your information you put out there, how much you use technology yourself. Yeah. I think you can drive yourself insane if you're worrying so much about things outside of your control.
I think some people, you made a point where you said that you think some people will embrace it. Now, when Dad a second ago was talking, I will come back to that in a second, but when Dad was talking a minute ago about this reality being created for you, essentially, it made me think of the film Vanilla Sky. Vanilla Sky.
Creeped me out, that film did.
But it's basically the situation where the premise of the film is you've got a very wealthy man who has a car accident which basically ruins his face. His life is not much fun after that. He's used to being, it's Tom Cruise, I think, he's used to being the attractive, rich man about town, socialite type. Suddenly he's massively deformed. So he basically signs up to this project essentially where they put a chip in his brain, they stick him in a machine really, and he experiences life. And it's all virtual reality.
As it was before.
Yeah, so he's having this great life, but it's not real, none of it's real. Now, in the end, he breaks out of that and whatever, but it makes me think, how many people, if their lives are so horrendous, and so many more people are being pushed into that through, whether it be just through poverty, would actually accept that life of a virtual reality game, essentially, because it's better than this shit.
Yeah. Well, what was that scientist? You used to use an example of him in the talks, Warwick something, and he had a line. He's a British scientist, and one of his lines were, if you were constantly having your thoughts sent to you, which kept you happy and satiated and felt good about the world, why not be part of the Matrix? You used to use that.
That's from the film, isn't it?
Yeah,
from the Matrix.
This was a guy.
No, it's a scientist. Was it? I think not far from here. I want to say Warwick University, something like that.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, he was really pushing the whole AI virtual reality thing at one time. Not heard him quoted for a while. Yeah, but I mean, what you've just described with that, what was it called? Vanilla
Sky.
Yeah. That's basically what we're living in. Mm-hmm. That was just a portrayal of it. That's what we're living in. We're living in a fake, false reality. And what they want to do is create another level of the false reality. and then another level of the false reality. So that there's so many levels of fake reality that we completely lose the plot of where we are and who we are and what the hell's going on. But I think that something that, people that of some age need to realize is the scale to which young people, and you mentioned the example on holiday, have been programmed in ways that we haven't, or many people of a certain age haven't. So when I grew up in the 50s and 60s, there were no computers, never mind smartphones or any of it. And what tends to happen is when you're born into the world is as it appears to you. So I was born in 1952, and I've seen the change. I've seen the extraordinary difference of what the world was like then. But if you're born into the world now, you're born into a world that it's your normal.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons they want rid of old people. It's because old people can remember what it was like, and they can see the change.
Yeah. Feels like a natural progression, doesn't it?
Yeah, but so everything is focused on young people, because they are the people that will be the adults when they want to bring this whole thing in full blown. And the more they can program them now, the more they will accept it as adults, as perfectly natural. Mm-hmm. And so we have this this obsession with technology, which will be far, far more open to being fused with AI than any of us would.
Yeah, 100%. Well, we're going to take one final question, which I think is a really nice way for us to end this question from Rumana. The freedom movement, which grew so quickly and was so effective and provided so much help during the pandemic, seems to have disappeared. Why is that? I really felt like I'd found my tribe, but now we're back to square one. Well, I think we talked about the hijack a lot.
That's a huge hijack. October 7th was a massive, I think, that was
Ukraine.
Yeah, October 7th for me more so was the one where you literally saw it split down the middle, where you had people that had campaigned, shut down vaccination centres, waited outside schools with placards to stop children they didn't even know being vaccinated because they wanted to save the children, suddenly then almost glorifying the murder of children in Palestine. That was quite extraordinary. Yeah. And that split the movement in half, because you saw you basically saw how many people believed all lives matters and how many people believed some lives matter. And that split it down the middle. It was very, very strange to see. I would say the whole thing's intentional. I also think there was a lot of people that were elevated during COVID, even small fry people like your Julie Hartley Brewers, people like that were kind of elevated. GB News, for instance, were elevated as this pro-freedom. I can trust them. They're not like the mainstream media. That as soon as October 7th happened, they towed the party line.
Of course it is.
Massively, and they drew a lot of people in with that. Because I trust that guy. I've watched him on my screen the whole way through COVID, and he was calling stuff out when no one else would. So why would he lie about this? And that sucked a lot of people in.
I think the other thing, the way to look at it is that if you're joining it, is it really a freedom movement? If you're joining something that is reciprocated, big word, on you joining with other people, eventually those people are going to have different views and you're going to splinter off. So how free are you if you're joining in, if you're part of something? I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'm saying how much of it is a freedom movement if it's a big movement of large amount of peoples because you're joining in with the masses. Yeah. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying that it's the psychology of it is you're actually part of something big. But if you refuse to go along with it and say, okay, I don't believe in that, now I'm gone off, you're actually, the inversion of it and the contradiction of it is you're actually more free now you've left because you haven't joined in on doing something that you don't believe in.
That's a very good point.
I think also that if you're, as we've said a few times tonight, is if we agree a certain type of behaviour is wrong, it doesn't matter who's doing it, because you can look at the attacks during the pandemic on humanity. You can look at what's going on in Gaza. You can look at what's going on in Russia, what's going on in Iran. You can look at what's going on across the world and say, well, the same behaviour traits are being exposed, which is humanity, the general population, are being targeted and are being forced into a position of suffering. Innocent people are being killed, whether you can apply that to whether they've been killed because they had the vaccine, killed because they're being bombed by the IDF, killed because they're being starved because of the cost of living, whatever it is, the same principles are happening. And all we do is call out each and every single one of them in exactly the same way, regardless of who the victim and who the oppressor may be, because that behaviour is wrong. Yeah. Whereas so many in the movement look at individual cases and go, well, it's all right if we do it, as we've said a few times in this conversation. We don't do that. No. And unfortunately, as you point rightly, Gaz, lots of people do. It's not all lives matter. It's some matter more than others.
Yeah. I think COVID went over above politics as well, though, because there wasn't a political part, there wasn't an alternative, and the war was on every single one of us. So if you were a liberal leftist or you were a far right protagonist, whatever they wanted to label you, the government was coming for both of you. Mm-hmm. And actually, even if you look at England, you look at Boris Johnson, what he was pushing through, you'd go, right, who can I vote for to get me out of this? Starmer wants harder lockdowns. They worked
all
in
on the same page. Even your Farages, they were
Farage was on the same page. There's pots and pans like a prat.
Good point. What you just made there is that. So as you say, David, like, is the freedom to choose. So if you got left and right doing the same thing, you'd no freedom there because there's no choice.
No, there is no.
So when you had this movement, you had the freedom. The lady is asking this question to join them, and you had the freedom to leave them. And you kept your freedom because you decided that isn't for me. So it was the freedom to choose. Broad that freedom ever is arguable, but the freedom to choose. So you need to have choices, and that's what David writes in his book is that it's the freedom to choose. So you have got your freedom. If you just chose to free yourself from the movement you no longer believed in.
Well, we don't have to align on everything. Like, we went to those protests in London where there was over 1 million people at one point. We all agreed that what was happening in this country and the wider world to do with vaccine mandates, to do with lockdowns, to do with the closing of business, all that was wrong. You might be a vile bloke at home to your partner. I don't agree with you on all of that. I don't agree with you on anything else because I don't know what you think about anything else. I know what you think about this and I align with you on that. And I think that has to be the starting point. You used to say this before. We can argue about whose fake God is better later. Let's all agree right now that this is wrong. And let's argue about details further down the line.
Well, I think that's the whole point of it, really. I mean, on those protest marches and gatherings in London, people unified around a common threat, and other things were put aside, and they were fantastic because of that. And in the end, we have to decide on what our priorities are, and if our priority is freedom, then that means freedom for everybody. And it means you will press for the freedom of people you don't like when they're being unfairly targeted. And you kind of had that mentality in the protest marches. In fact, they weren't really protest marches, were they? They were almost like spiritual events of coming together behind a common cause. And then once that cause disappeared, or appeared to disappear, people then just broke off back into their separation and their fragmentation. And as Gaz has mentioned, it has been systematic. I mean, I've not been very, very vocal on the takeover of the alternative media just to be a pain in the arse, because I saw it happening. I saw the start of it. I contacted Alex Jones via his producer and said, look, this movement's being taken over. And what came back was, yeah, Alex agrees with you, but he doesn't know what to do about it. The next thing I know, Alex Jones is having on his show all these people that were taking it over. And of course, he's become absorbed into the whole thing himself long ago now. And so they have put people in there to disrupt, to create conflict and chaos, and to gather the wagons around Trump. And they've also built this barricade of here and no further. So they have focused attention on the political level, pretty much alone, as A, being the conspiracy, it's the Democrats, and B, that the conspiracy is the political manipulation, when it's just an expression of it, a playing out of it. It's not the core or origin of it at all. And all these things have come together, conspired together, to fragment the entire alternative quote movement that reached its peak during COVID. Well, in England it did anyway.
I think another point as well, you mentioned earlier about you can't unhear something, and you've said this before as well, you can't unhear something. I think that ties into a lot of people awakened through COVID and started to push back and were part of those movements. And then once that supposedly died down, they went back to their everyday lives. And then within 5 minutes, the war in Ukraine kicked off. And it's that understanding that once you know something and you know the world is controlled by these types of people, you can't just go back. You can't just pretend that doesn't happen anymore and go back to, watching Love Island, getting drunk on a Friday night as if none of it matters. And I think that's something that people maybe have not considered as well, is the appetite and the energy people have to go again, because they're bombarding us with so many different things. And we know that there's been so many times they have tried to destroy people, whether it be Operation kind of Future Shock, you call it, or just hitting everyone with a kitchen sink, and people just go, I've not got the energy to deal with this anymore. Ignorance is easier. I think that's probably part of it as well, where people just don't have the energy to go, right, this is Ukraine next, oh, it's this next, oh, it's that next. And pushing back is not a 5-minute job. It's not something. It's like, if you're trying to bring down the system and turn the world into a better place, we can't just give up after one event and think we've won that, we're off. No, we haven't won that. We've done okay at that. It's on to the next one, to the next one, to the next one, until this whole system is dismantled. And that takes a lot. And I don't know if everyone's ready to give that.
Well, it's called a resistance for a reason, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's not one event. COVID was one event of many which have followed since.
Yeah, but I think. When I say that a barricade was built around the alternative media of here and no further, the fact that there was a political conspiracy was kind of seen by a lot of people during COVID. It was obvious. It was all orchestrated worldwide. Governments were acting the same and doing the same.
Even in Iran.
Exactly. Russia, all of it. It was almost like, okay, we don't mind people knowing this now, and we don't mind people circulating it up to a point, as long as it doesn't go too far. What we don't want them to know is the scale of the conspiracy. Which leads to the answers to it. We don't want them to know that they are literally creating their own reality from their perceptions of reality, and we're manipulating their perceptions of reality. They don't want any of that. They don't want people to know that there's a non-human force that's actually manipulating from the unseen, from this astral dimension. They don't want people to know any of that. They just want them to focus on Trump's the savior and Harris and Biden are the Antichrist. And so they have neutered that expansion of awareness, and they've held it back. And without that expansion of awareness, you become an eddy in the river, going round and round and round and round and round. You've only got to go on Twitter to see how it is all focused on the political level, almost entirely, not absolutely entirely, but almost entirely. All the major accounts are all based on this political puppet show. And it's neutered the alternative media because it's neutered the, as I mentioned earlier about whatever you know, there's always more to know. Well, that's how you move through the, if you like, the onion skins of perceptual programming, and you break them and break them and break them and expand and expand and expand, and you learn and see and perceive more. They've blocked that by making the whole focus of the conspiracy on the political level.
That's why Ickonic exists, to do the exact opposite.
Exactly.
Well, thank you very much for your question, Romana, and thank you to everyone that sent questions in. I've got one final comment to leave from everyone.
Don't start with me.
That's not a great.
What about you,
comment
Rich?
to end with. Is it? Oh, that wasn't your actual comment.
That is it. Just look down the barrel. Don't start with me.
Don't start with me. I don't know what is my final comment. I guess to a lot of what we've spoke about is about the manipulation of people and the fact that people allow themselves to be manipulated. And so I guess I would say to be your authentic self, whatever that is. No matter what you are or where you are, there's only one of you. And you're here for a reason. That's what I tell my children anyway. And that's what, not that you're my kids, but
Some of them might be.
you know. But yeah, I guess that's it. That's all I would say.
Edit that out.
Why? That's my best bit. I would say just do the next right thing. That's all you really need to.
Well, you're the next right thing to me, so best of luck, son.
He steered into that, didn't
That
he?
was really good.
What about you, Daz?
Authority lies, that's what it does. So when authority tells you something, take it first and foremost as a lie. And when you look at it, you might be surprised every now and again, and it will be now and again, that actually they were telling the truth this time. But if you start out on, okay, authority is telling the truth, then you're already lost.
Yeah.
Because that's not what it does most of the time. It lies. So if you, when authority says this has happened and this is why, it usually means this has happened, but the why is, or maybe even it hasn't happened, but the why is very different to what they're telling you. So be completely skeptical about authority and take it that it's lying as a matter of course. And like I say, when you investigate, and we should, and when you question, you'll find invariably that actually they were lying, and then you'll see why they were lying. There's always an ulterior motive. And on the odd occasion, you might think, oh no, they were telling the truth this time, and that's a bonus. But taking authority as its word, as a matter of course, is that's going to get you in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, completely agree. And I would say that one of the keys, the key really, is that any kind of resistance, any kind of revolution, any context, has to start with the person that looks back at you in the mirror, has to start with yourself. And I think a lot of the reason that people are so disengaged and disenfranchised is because they look at the problems that are so far on the surface anyway, outside of their control first, rather than looking at the problems that they have or the things that they can actually impact from day dot. Like you've said a couple of times, mate, you can impact how you speak to people, you can impact how you treat people, the relationships you have in your life, the way you look after yourself, the way you perceive information, the way that you take things and decide for yourself whether they have any validity or whether they don't. You can decide that for yourself. You don't need anybody else. And I think starting there is a great place to re-evaluate your relationship with yourself and the wider world. So
yeah, absolutely. And I would also say, don't get caught in the bloody drama.
No, exactly. I'm reading a book at the moment. It's brilliant, called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, and it says you've only got so many fucks to give, so be careful where you put them. Make sure they go on things that actually
Twice
matter.
he said that.
Your mum.
That's all right.
2 F-bombs.
That's all right.
Your mum watching.
It's true, and it also speaks about, and this is true, we spoke about this today, that life is full of challenges. It's just up to you whether they're challenges you want to face. Some people, like we said before we came on air, you've got people challenged by whether they're going to be able to feed themselves that night, and then you've got billionaires facing a challenge in their minds of how can they avoid paying tax. We all face challenges, and I think choosing what challenges you face and whether you actually want to face them. Getting up as you guys can vouch, getting up at 6 a.m. with 2 kids on a weekend when you're knackered is a challenge, but it's a challenge you want to do because the outcome's work.
Can I be the billionaire worried about the tax bill, please? If we're choosing challenges.
Well, yeah, exactly. This is true. Well, thank you so much for tuning in with us this evening, everybody. This was the first episode of the Roundtable. Hope you've enjoyed it. Please leave comments in the episode below, and we're going to be doing these more frequently, if you like them, that is.
I was going to say,
over the
depending
coming
on the
weeks and months.
Yeah, good point.
Well, thank you, everyone.
Right.
Bye.